Morning, depending where you are connected from. Welcome to the second day of the TRANSCEND Webstival. So yesterday we started with the emphasis on the financial innovation and the opportunities that you can tap into and use for your for advancing your transformative water reforms and water sector adaptation. Today, we are going to continue with the institutional capacity building for transformative adaptation. And we have a very interesting program for you that will start with a keynote, and then we will go into the panel with an interesting insight from the pilots. So my name is Jaroslav Mysiak. You might remember me from yesterday. I'm with the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change. I'm happy to moderate today's meeting. And I need to remind you of the housekeeping rules. As this session is recorded, that means if you want to appear on the picture or in the proceedings, keep that in mind that we are recording both the sound and the video transmission. And if you would like to post question, use the Q&A facility. You might find it under the menu of the Zoom, and feel free to post a question anytime during the Webstival. And yeah, then so this is what we are starting with today. We will reconnect to the discussion of yesterday and looking into how the institutional transformation might help us in for designing the ambitious level of adaptation. And we have invited a distinguished expert that is working on transformational adaptation for a long time. So Dr. Thomas Koetz is an expert in sustainability, transition, climate resilience, biodiversity, and science policy interface. He happens to coordinate a 30 million worth of Horizon Europe project, which is called Pathways to Resilience. It's a part of mission adaptation that we talked about yesterday. And Thomas is not only implementing this project of mission, but he was at the beginning helping to shape the mission adaptation. At that time, working at the European Commission. Now he's working at the climate cake, and he's senior scientist working on the implementation of this project. But Thomas has also a large experience in designing biodiversity protection and preservation from his earlier times as the expert of the EPBES, International Policy Mechanism for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services at the UN Environmental. So we are looking forward to learning more about the pathways to resilience and the ways and opportunities provided by this program, but also experiences that Thomas is going to share with us. And so, Thomas, without any further ado, I would hand over to you, and you have 25 minutes, and then afterwards we take the question. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jaroslav. I'm just gonna can you see my screens now?
Yeah, not in presentation mode. Yeah, now it's perfect.
Yes. So yes, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Jaroslav, for the kind introduction and for giving me the opportunity to present some of our work here as well in this context. I'm very honored to do that. I've been invited to speak on building institutional capacity to design and implement transformational climate resilient pathways to cover the institutional transformation aspect of this Webstival. And so I will do so using the experience from the Pathway to Resilience project that Jaroslav just mentioned. So first, maybe a few words about the project itself. So it started 3 years ago, and it's altogether a 5-year project that has the objective to empower 100 European regions and communities to formulate pathways to transformative adaptation. And we do that by supporting these 100 regions to develop and design their climate resilient strategies, action plans, and investment plans. But the other objective we want to do is not only helping them to design these products, but we also want to build their capacity and capabilities to then continue and lead on their transition to climate resilience beyond the project itself. So it's a capability or a capacity building project just as much. Jaroslav mentioned already, it's part of the EU mission. It's with Climax, one of the flagships. It's in a sub-granting project. So of the 30 million that Jaroslav mentioned, the project is worth 21 million. So more than 2/3 are going directly to the regions, an equal split. So each region gets 210,000, and they get that to then support them, and they can do a large amount of things with that. There's quite a flexibility throughout 18 months that we are shepherding these regions along the way. So we have 100 regions from 38 different countries. You here see the spread. They're split in two cohorts. So we started with the first cohort about 18 months ago. Indeed, actually, the first cohort is finalizing their work now and has to actually the deadline to send their final deliverables to us as a project end of this month. So I'll come back to this as an interesting moment of time. Unfortunately, we don't have yet the results. I would have loved to present the results of that. If this Webstival would have been a month or two later, we would have had different results, more recent, but I still have some interesting things to show. The other cohort of 62 regions has started beginning of this year and goes all the way until July 27 next year. Now, so what we do is we really want to support them in terms of their pathways to transformative adaptation. Now, what is that? We had a lot of question of the regions. So what does that mean? And if it only means transformational things, and or if other things are covered as well, etc., etc. This is why we used to sort of show this graph as one of the examples. I mean, first of all, when we work with the regions, we talk about a large amount of aspects. And it's not only transformational aspects, but also incremental aspects, or what is already existing there. And one of the key elements to look at is this, transformative adaptation within this context of the 4 different capabilities. The anticipatory capability or capacities, absorptive capacities, adaptive capacity, and transformative capacity. And so this is what very much at the backbone thinking of Pathway to Resilience, to think about capability building. I mentioned that in the beginning. And here you can see sort of when you have this this X and Y axis of time exposure and disturbance intensity, you have a large number of events which are in the lower quadrant here, where it's a rather stable situation where what you have in place and where all of what you want to do or need to do is to make sure that your system in place and your institutions are absorptive. They can absorb the shocks that are coming. That's where you want to be for most of the cases, because then the system works, so to speak. It draws on available resources, and what you're worried about or you think about is persistence. You want to keep it in a certain way. If then, or the time exposure of your disturbance, like think about droughts, is getting longer and is more, or the intensity, think of storms or flash floods, is getting stronger, you end up in that next level where you have more problems, and you need to start adjusting and you need to adapt your systems, but it's still the idea that you adapt your existing systems, right? So for you, if you have a dike or a sort of flood control system, you just level up half a meter more on your dike, and then then you cover the next level of your climate impacts or climate risks. So what we're talking about here is improving existing systems and incremental adjustment of what is already there. But if the intensities are increasing further, for example, in these very strong flash floods now we have seen in Valencia 2 years ago, or where you have, instead of having a 100 years flood, you have that every 10 or 15 years. Or if the drought or the time of exposure is becoming really, really serious and more longer endurance, and you really have a drought problem, you really need to any region of this sort will then find itself in a situation where it has to think about really transformation. It has to create new systems, and it has to have a transformative capacity. And so in order to also measure and see what is it that you have in climate impacts and what is it that you have in terms of your system in place, you need to have that anticipatory capacity as well. So that's underpinning the three things here. So this is that as an introduction. Then what we have then developed in Pathway to Resilience is a sort of a conceptual framework, which we call the Regional Resilience Journey, or RRJ, that is basically a change process facilitating transformative change towards climate resilience. And here to the left, you can see the entire cycle, if you so want, going from preparing the ground, building a shared vision, then you design your pathways, and then you finish the sort of the planning and strategizing phase and move into the implementation and action phase. So you first take action and implement, then you learn, reflect, and scale up as the fifth element there, and then you institutionalize, you make it the new normal, and you really have it then at the institutional large scale. And so based on this, we have so Pathway to Resilience only covers the first three of these phases, and has then broken down further this transformational framework or steps into a whole number of steps. So the three phases are divided in yet another 18 sub-steps or steps and sub-steps. The first one, preparing the ground, for example, has to establish a baseline, understand the system, which includes mapping the systems itself, but also mapping stakeholders and and vulnerable groups, and then assess risk and vulnerabilities, for example. And then in the second phase, you go into build a shared vision, you explore possible futures, you co-create a shared vision, and then once you have an idea where you want to be as a community, then you develop your theory of change of, what's the theory of actually getting there and what changes need to take place. And then you move into the third phase of designing pathways, which includes all sorts of, identification and access and assessment of options, and then designing portfolio of many different options of coming together to really underpin that transformative change. So portfolio of intervention is really a key element there as well, because just one single measure itself won't do the job to actually support the transformation of a system. And then you prepare for implementation. And that leads us then to gain sort of advice to get to your assessments, baseline assessment, the climate strategy, and the action plan. Very important is that, and you can see that already in the circle here, is that you have an inner circle, which is the purpose, that blue one. There's just climate transitions. But in between the purpose and the process, you have one smaller one, which is called leveraging the conditions that enable transition to climate resilience. So what we have really put a lot of emphasis on, and this is picking up from a sort of a guiding principle from the mission adaptation as such, is to think about enabling conditions. because none of these process elements and steps I have just introduced, none of this will actually be working well, nor in design, nor in implementation, if you don't think and have available decent data and knowledge, the right appropriate governance and engagement and collaboration frameworks or structures, finances or resources, the capability skills, the behavioral change system and background, and a sort of a system or like an attitude towards experimentation, learning, and reflection. So we put a lot of emphasis about these key enabling conditions, and this is also where your institutional capacity often lies, right? So this is what we then take as often as the backbone in thinking about, okay, if you want to change, if you want to embark on a transformative change path, above you have the different steps, but below is what you need to have as capacities to underpin and make this work as an institution. Now, one of the things we had singled out in our project as a most important is indeed what Jaroslav, I think, presented on yesterday, which is the financing element. And so we have looked at the finance and resource as a specific, more detailed aspect, and we have sort of designed an adaptation and investment cycle that goes much more in detail and provides guidance on how to think about financing and resources and economics and more general at each of the steps. So preparing the ground or assessing, you have to define regional context and set climate resilience context, but also you have to understand what are the costs of effects or what are the costs of anticipated impacts, etc. And then you go all the way to planning bankable projects in step 3 and 4, etc., etc. So it's you can think about sort of the institutional design and the thinking of any of the key enabling conditions as underpinning any of the different phases and steps of the change process itself. This is is quite nicely done here in terms of the finance and investment one. Now, on both the RRJ, the Regional Resilience Journey, and the Adaptation Investment Cycle, Pathway to Resilience has developed very detailed guidance and a lot of webinars and support. So what we do is we, based on these two conceptual frameworks, we have developed a sort of a capability building program, which you can see here to the left, which is the one now for the second cohort, nicely done. So it's an 18-month process or time duration where we implement through a whole range of different webinars or tool moments. Sorry. And we have like the whole program, which includes, for example, the guidance, there's a toolbox, there's online sessions, there's touch-based, sort of individual touch-based sessions with each of the regions alone. There's a one-to-one support program for a few, like 10% of the 100 regions. And then we have innovation practice groups, is basically where on topics all the regions come together and exchange on practices on different topics, for example, etc., etc. So this is an 18-month program, which is at the core of then delivery of our work to the region. Now, as I said before, one of the key parts or at the core of what we want to achieve is to build capability. Build capability that, on the one hand, as I mentioned, helps them to develop these deliverables that we need to see at the end of the 18 months from the regions, the strategy, action plans, and investment plans, but also the capabilities to for them to then know and to build their what we call their resilience maturity, to have the institutional capacity or capability to then continue on their own, on their transformational path. And so we have developed what we call the Pathway to Resilient Self-Assessment, or the Pathway P2R, also RMC stands for Regional Maturity Curve Self-Assessment. which is available for everyone on the website. So you can download that yourself. So following that link or that hyperlink, once you go on the website, which is under resources, you can find it there. And that self-assessment questionnaire has about 100 questions, which cover the three phases of the RJ that P2R is looking at, preparing the ground, build a shared vision, and design pathways. And fourthly, the fourth element is about the key enabling condition, which I just elaborated on. And here you see them one spelled out. Right, so the 100 plus questions are covering and are asking what is your capability or capacity vis-a-vis these phases and your enabling conditions. And what we do with 100 regions, we ask them at the beginning of their process working with us, so we get a good intelligence on where they stand with their capability. In fact, actually, we ask that already as part of their application. Part of the application or selection is to have a good spread and a good representation of rather vulnerable or less capability developed regions as part of the 100. And so that's part of the beginning of our work with the 100 regions. And then towards the end, we have them again going through the same process. And so we can have a comparison where they have progressed in terms of the capabilities during the 18 months. We are aware that in 18 months, an institution doesn't drastically or dramatically change, but to some extent, we are keen to see that. And we have then always also, so, you see this reflected, the four different capacities in terms of anticipatory, absorptive, adaptive, and transformative capacity. As I said before, in my second slide, I explained these. And so next to the description of how your capacity is vis-a-vis a certain step of the RJ or the key enabling conditions, we also have categorized the different questions according to these four different types of capacity, and the 4A plus T, 3A plus T type of capacities. And so at the end, when you go through and do your this self-assessment questionnaire, you see here up on the top an example of the questions. So you have an assessment area. This would be in the phase 3, in the beginning of assessing risk and vulnerabilities. Sorry, it's the phase 1, sorry. And then you have a rubrics type of scoring scale, 5 different rubrics with different scores and some description, qualitative description, what it means. Then you self sort of select a score. You can see this is linked to an anticipatory capacity, this for adaptation capacity. And then you end up getting a final score here in the results section at the end, where this is all being sort of measured together for the baseline, the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 enabling conditions. And then the idea is that you do this twice and that you get the change, right? So you do it once in the beginning and once at the end of the 18 months. And then you can see here all different nice sort of changes. And this is not yet full because we haven't yet on the both sides together. But you can here have a capacity per enabling condition. You have the resilience maturity per capacity. So that's the 3A plus T approach. And here's the capacity on the RJ by phases. So phase 1, 2, and 3, in which areas they're talking about. And here by tasks. And these are 18 task lines. And so, so this is basically giving you an understanding of what is there in terms of the key elements or key frameworks and mechanisms we work with in Pathway to Resilience. And then before closing, I have 2 slides on giving some first results. As I said, the final results, we're just a few weeks short of having. I could have presented something in 2-3 weeks where we would have more final results. But these results are from last summer when the regions were halfway through their 18-month, the first 38 regions. And so part from in a questionnaire, we have asked them, have you seen significant changes or transformations in your progress in your region? Can you tell us about a progress made since starting on the P2R? What significant changes have you observed? And was any of these transformative and why? And we've seen sort of their response is that the most significant changes at that time have happened in areas of, or in the context or concepts of awareness and a mindset shift, which is already very important to actually start a more systemic and transformational approach. Then we have seen, and concretely, actually, with different examples of new types of collaborations or partnerships emerging. For example, across multi-level governance or across silos, across departments, new frameworks or new partnerships have been established. You can think about 11 responses has said that they have now a more systemic and integrated and strategic approach to their design and development of climate adaptation. They have also reported quite a number of stakeholder engagement approaches that are new and have made a difference. And I mentioned multi-level governance and coordination or cooperation there as another institutional shift. So I'm showing this as examples that already after 8 months or 9 months, the regions that we work with showed some signs of institutional capacity building and some changes in how the institutions are working with climate change, adaptation strategizing. Now my last slide. We've also asked them what challenges you still encounter. And here again, it's nothing surprising as such, but it's interesting to see in terms of actual feedback as well. You have multi-level coordination gaps as number one challenge, technical skills gap as another one, in particular, for example, in finance as one, but also many other aspects. Stakeholder participation barriers. It's very difficult still to bring all the broad range of stakeholders you would ideally bring to the table to think systemically. And then another one is data fragmentation and interagency cooperation. And so this speaks also to your institutional setup in terms of how you bring the data together in a harmonized and accessible way, etc., etc. So this is quite interesting. And then on the bottom is a bit of a summary kind of idea. So we've seen that coordination complexity exceeds expectations. So regions have reported back that they are quite surprised and how complex it is to actually coordinate with other institutions beyond the guidance given and etc. Like when it actually has been done. Again, nothing surprising, but still important to mention. And then we have as a second one, which is interesting, sort of that institutional readiness lags behind technical capacity. So even if you have people that are capacitated and you have the technical capacity at the table, the institutional readiness to actually work and accept that and move beyond instances or to really make it systemic or a part of the institution is lagging behind. Again, not a surprise, but very important to have that in mind that there's it's just a lag or time lag. It takes longer. And then that knowledge gaps persist despite data availability. It's a minor, more not so important for this conversation or discussion here. Well, I hope this was interesting and giving you lots of overview of what we are doing. And now I'm ready to engage in any question and answers or discussion if you have any questions. Over to you, Jaroslav.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Thomas. That was really brilliant. Can I ask you to go back the one slide, because it stimulates also the thinking and the questions from the audience. So I just remind everybody, if you would like to post a question, use the Q&A or the chat if you have access to it. And let us know what you would be interested to learning from Thomas. But when I look, Thomas, if I may, right, when I look at this result, it's fantastic, right? It's first of all, this is exactly the background of the design of our Webstivals, right? We started with the finance because typically, we start with technical, institutional, and finance comes at the end, and then you realize that for the financial, right, you might have turned it around and you really need something different. And this comes very clearly from your slide, right? The lack of financial instrument is not perceived as the major problem, right? It's down the road, right? It's 14, but not everybody, right? It's
It's very, yeah, it's a very good, interesting point. So
yeah,
despite that, and maybe I can go back to despite the fact that we actually hammer home the
yeah,
point of starting with the finances from the beginning, and we have,
right.
I showed the adaptation investment cycle, you know, Kit and Costas leading that work. They've started at the same time the regions start with everything else. They start with the thinking on financing.
Yeah,
So despite that, when we did ask this halfway around, most of the regions were still busy with their main climate risk assessment and the
yeah,
impacts and the scenario building, and they haven't gotten to the more finance nitty-gritty, like, the finance instruments pieces of work. So we because we discussed like, oh, this is interesting because this is maybe a bit of an outlier why this is so low at that point, because we would have expected the lack of financing is quite skills quite large.
yeah,
And we come to the conclusion, and we will see now when we get the final results back, but we think it's because they weren't yet with their heads down, and they didn't have yet to grasp and grapple with that question so much in our work at that
mm,
time when we asked them around. So, but it's true, it's relatively low, and it's exactly what we expect now, that when they now have to finish and really do their investment planning at the end for the whole pathways, that they will probably struggle much more. And they have
yeah.
heard them in Budapest 2 months ago. They were saying exactly that. It's like a huge gap still to be done there. Yeah, well said.
This is really fantastic and exactly in line with what we have observed in our research elsewhere. And I also like your point on the slide. Institutional readiness often lags behind technical capacities. So whenever we start with technical capacities, I think the capacity is there, but the way how it's deployed in order to stimulate innovation in the policy design in transformational change is something that the public authorities and manager are not familiar with. So institutional readiness is definitely also, from our experiences, far behind the technical capabilities when we speak and we will probably hear that also from the panel. So it does resonate very much. Thank you very much for that, Thomas. And I'm still looking at the Q&A. No question. So I would have one more question. We still have a few minutes. So we are having colleagues from the water sector, right? From the water management sectors, they have been designing the institutional reform, reallocation of water permits, for example, or the reallocation of the permits to use the water, but also technical intervention like how to introduce metering and so on. Now, compared to what you have been dealing with, pathways to resilience, does water steps out from the crowd of the people interested to do institutional reform, or is it more on the transversal adaptation planning, or what you have observed from your regions? Is water adaptation something important in your portfolio of projects?
Yeah, it definitely is the short answer. The broader answer is sort of in the beginning, we asked the regions to be as broad. I mean, I can maybe go back to the previous slides. Um, yeah, so in principle, we asked them to be as broad as possible, right? To really see the systemic interlinkages of, of too much or too little water in the context of what, and then other problems of, demographic change or this or that. And um, um, so so in particular in phase one, we want to have a broader picture, and then building the shared vision would also be nice to have a more broader kind of vision in terms of ex possible futures. But then, I mean, because time is so short and the regions are struggling with all this, I mean, it's a huge amount of information and work to be done. We've seen a lot of focusing on specific topics. And within this context of topics, then the questions of too much or too little water, so floods or droughts in different forms or shape, is amongst number one priorities of the regions. Next to heat, heat has been an incredible sort of lots of interest as well. And then you can also we have also different aspects or angles of, for example, agriculture, but then that links often to water as well, right? So,
Yeah.
but floods, agriculture, or droughts have been definitely at the center of our thinking or the
And
region's concerns. Yeah.
fantastic. There are some early questions popping in, and the first one is the last slide when you show the list of challenges. Is this list predetermined by you? You let the regions to choose from, or are they bottom-up reflections from their side?
These
These challenges, they were
These were, yeah, yeah. I think no, we had were two things. We had some predetermined, and then we had open choice as well, others, and so there it's a mix.
yeah, it's a mixed. And the very final question that we can take, because we need to move on, is that there was a interesting focus on disinformation and misinformation, also in the adaptation and so on. And there was a recent call. I don't know whether you have seen that. So this is it attracted something like 96 submitted proposals, out of which only 3 will be funded. So it is a key topic everybody's interested in. So the question is whether in your institutional framework for adaptation planning, you have something on misinformation or how to deal with the situation if somebody is exploiting, right? Um, fake news or spreads out this type of information in order to reduce the mandate, or the legitimacy of adaptation. Do you have it somewhere in the framework?
Um, so actually, I think we may have mentioned it somewhere in passing, but it's not a central topic. I mean, it was, but it is definitely something that we and also partners of Pathway to Resilience consider important, and so, which is why we are among the 196 proposals, or I mean, to further develop that work and eventually then also enrich or integrate any kind of guidance or suggestion of how to deal with that in our guidance material, right? So in the material you can already find. But at the moment, this, if at all, I think it is somewhere mentioned very collateral,
Yeah,
but not a central stage. But it should be because it's an important part. It's definitely part when you think about behavioral change and when you think
absolutely.
about how to
Yeah,
do this, and this is
yeah,
sort of the counterpart of the, sort of you have to encounter bad behavior patterns being caused by misinformation. This,
Fantastic, Thomas. It is so lovely to, have you with us and listen to what you have achieved in the project and also what you have thought of and what your result as they are coming in might be. So it was really nice. Thank you very much. We need to move on. And I know that you need to leave, so feel free to disconnect. Otherwise, if you stayed, you would be able to follow the discussion from our live living labs. And
Thank you
for
very much. Yeah,
yeah,
but I thank you very much. No, I think I need to leave because this
I
is
know. Yeah,
on my
thank you.
free day, and the kids are waiting to
Yeah.
go.
Oh, thank you very much for having shared also your free time with us. Much appreciated.
Always. Bye bye.
Bye bye. And with that, I invite Tanya to take over the moderation and to introduce us to the panel from the Living Labs. Tanya, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, Yaro. But actually, first we are going to move to the participant survey section, and Francesco has joined us to kick us off before Tonya.
That's right. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you, Melissa and Jero. Hi, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Francesco Sapino from Imdea Water, and I'm going to guide you through this survey that is very important for us that you participate. So please have your phone ready or your computer, and please scan the QR that is now on shown, or put the code in the website. And please remember that all this information will be in a report that we will produce at the end of the project on barriers and opportunities. Good. So we were over 30 people, I think, connected. So please don't be lazy. We're still 21. Okay. Whenever the last one are going to connect. So the first part, we are asking you to rank the institutional barriers that hinder action on water projects. So first we have the lock-in costs, that is refers to the path dependencies of our institution, no? Whenever they are often rigid and difficult to change without a measured external shock. Next, we have the institutional transaction cost. This isn't just about money itself, it's also about time, the amount of time, the administration and the effort that is required to actually transform the system we already have in place. Then we have the political legitimacy. This describes the pressure on decision makers to only take action that align with their constituents' current beliefs rather than taking risk with something new. Then we have the regulatory capture, where specific self-interest groups might co-opt an agency or process to serve their own goals. Then we have the political ecology and power. As we know, water policies aren't always decided by data alone. No? They are often the results of negotiation between the most dominant players in the room. Then we have the budgetary constraints. As you will know, every dollar invested in water project is one taken from another vital area. So we always have budgetary constraints, of course. And finally, we have the oversell. That is the risk of setting the bar for success too high, that any minor failure, leads to a total loss of public trust. Good. So I saw that 28 are connected. So we give you some time to finish. We have 10 response. Very good. We can wait a bit more, although A12, we are almost there. Okay, maybe we can start seeing the results while the last 10 people submit the response. I imagine they will go through in a moment. Okay, so according to your responses, the main barrier is the budgetary constraints. So yeah, probably one that is expected. But then we also have the political ecology and power that is the second most voted. Then the others that seems quite similar, but it's increasing a little bit. But the rank remained the same. So political legitimate is third, and lock-in cost fourth. Good. We're still missing some results, but please finish it. And now we can go through the second part. So also consider that if you want to take a look at the previous barriers, you will find them a screenshot in the chat. It will be uploaded in any second now. Okay, so for the second part, we are going to go to the recommendation to what we have to prioritize to address these institutional barriers. Okay, so in this case, we are not asking you to rank them, but to define the priority of each of these. So in this case, we start with the build a polycentric governance system, which means distributing decision-making across multiple centers rather than relying only on a single authority. Then we have the investing when transaction costs are low, so taking advantage of windows of opportunities where this change is easier and more efficient. Then developing consensus through constructive dialogue, this emphasizing the trust building and shared understanding between the stakeholders. And a good example is the Talanoa dialogue that we are actually using in the TRANSCEND project. Another option is expanding public and private partnership. This bringing in the private sector capacity and financing, of course. And then we also leveraging the system shocks. So using the moments of crisis or disruption as an opportunity to push forward this very important change. Then there is the building larger networks, so increasing the collaboration to amplify value and impact, scaling services in another pathway, so reducing costs through the economy of scale, of course. We also highlight strong public leadership, placing institution at the forefront of the driving transformation change. And finally, regulation to create stable market signals that help guide long-term investment and accountability. So I see that some of you already answered. Please still do that. Fantastic. Number of responses are increasing. So as before, we are allowing you some more time before showing the results. Okay, we reached 20 answers, so maybe we can start seeing the results. Okay, so the highest priority was given to create more public and private partnership contract, I think. Then we have the develop consensus through empathic and constructive knowledge sharing with the same rank as build polycentric governance system. These are the three ones with the highest priority, if I'm not wrong. And then we have the put public leadership at the front line to deploy transformation solution, as well as regulate to create stable signals for the market. Very good. Very good. Nice. So please, we have 32 people that are connected. We still are missing 12 answers. Please finishing these and submit your answers. In the meanwhile, I think we have finished this survey part. So I think I can pass the word to Tanya this time.
Thanks so much for this introduction and the previous presentation that we have from Thomas. Super interesting. I think this methodology could really help us to inspire our work related with the development of these pathways to resilience. Now we will be talking about with the Living Labs related with the reflections from Living Labs on institutional adaptation opportunities that we see from the institutional point of view. The idea is that each of the Living Lab will answer 2 questions. How is your region building institutional capacity for adaptation? And then how do you keep your region informed about new opportunities to advance institutional capacity? I think these Living Labs are super interesting because they have like a specific condition related with the transboundary governance in each Living Lab. We will see Living Labs with international borders and also with region borders that give us the idea of the complexity related with the institutions and how to integrate this work with the different institutions. So for that, we will start with the Titicaca, Desaguadero, and Popo Living Lab. Julio Cesar Miranda and Gustavo Ayala will talk about these 2 questions. They will have 7 minutes to respond to questions that I shared before. Julio Cesar Miranda Aranibar is a civil engineer with postgraduate training at a master level in geoinformation science and earth observation with a specialization of water resource assessment. He has more than 15 years of professional experience developed across the 3 levels of Bolivian state, including the Ministry of Environmental and Water, the departmental and municipal government of Oruro, that is one of the regions that we have in this Living Lab, as well as an international cooperation projects in Bolivia and international organizations such as the Binational Autonomous Authority of the TDPS, the Titicaca, Desaguadero, and Popo system. He currently serves in this last institution as a water resource specialist, where he lead work focused on integrate water management, the design and implementation of hydrometeorological monitoring systems, the modernization and management of hydraulic works, and the formulation of territorial planning projects oriented toward the sustainable use of water and hydrobiological resources. And Gustavo Ayala. Gustavo is part of the SCI team in Latin America. He's a civil engineer specializing in hydrology, holding a master's degree in civil and environmental engineering with over 15 years of experience in water resource management, hydrological modeling, and early warning systems. He is currently researching in SCI in Latin America, leading international projects and water planning based in modeling and climate risk analysis in Latin America. He previously held key roles at Bolivia Ministry of Environment and Water, contributing to national monitoring and early warning system, including the national water balance and draw monitoring tools. So up to you, Gustavo and Julio Cesar.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gustavo Ayala. As Tania mentioned, we will make a presentation about the institutional capacity building in our living lab in Latin America, which is related to the basins of Titicaca Lake, the Saguadero River, Popo Lake, and this is a very important system of watersheds in Bolivia and Peru, because of the population who lives there, and also the geographical context that Tania previously mentioned. No? This is a system of basins that is shared between Bolivia and Peru, and so there are many challenges related to the institutional capacity building. But our partners, and I will give the opportunity to Julio Cesar to talk about ALT, the institution who is the binational authority of the basins, to talk about the advances and also the challenges and the opportunities they have been working during this. I think Julio Cesar is at least 25 or more than 30 years of work in the for the institution, because it was created at 1992, I guess, after the binational master plan was released by the governments. So for the first question, how is your region building institutional capacity? I will introduce a very a specific idea I have after we have been working with the Living Lab and also working with ALT, no? as our partner, local partner in the region. And is ALT institutional capacity is very encompassed in monitoring, and this is very important for our studies, for our project in the Living Lab, because of the challenges and the complexity to share information. Maybe Thomas in the presentation they talk about this specific challenge and complexity. That's a problem, a very general and global problem, I think, related to water management, and ALT is working a lot about that. And ALT has a very key role in the basin, because they monitor specifically the lakes. In the picture we put a picture of the downstream of the Titicaca Lake, where ALT has an infrastructure to regulate the volume of the water, and they monitor all the time the water levels. So I will give Julio Cesar the opportunity to talk about this more. So please, Julio Cesar, if you can.
Thank you, Gustavo, and thank you, Tania, for that kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share the perspective of the binational authority of Titicaca Lake, known as ALT, regarding institutional capacity for adaptation in the Titicaca, the Saguadero, Popo, and Salar de Coipasa system, known as the TDPS system here in South America. From our institutional perspective, building capacity for adaptation is not only a technical task, it is also a process of coordination, information management, planning, and sustained dialogue among institutions from both countries that share the same hydrological system, in this case, Peru and Bolivia. In our region, adaptation capacity is being strengthened, but through several complementary lines of action. First, we are working to consolidate technical information and improve the availability of data for decision-making. The TDPS system is highly sensitive to climate variability, so especially to changes in rainfall patterns, extensive droughts, floods, lake level fluctuations, and pressures on water quality, above all. In the last decade, these fluctuations have affected not only Titicaca Lake, but have been even more severe in Popo Lake and Uruburu Lake, which are the lakes down and south in the system. In this case, Lake Popo, the reduction in water levels has been so critical that the lake has practically disappeared, generating serious environmental, social, and institutional concerns for the region. For this reason, one of the most important institutional capacities is the ability to generate, organize, interpret, and share reliable information. However, between Bolivia and Peru, there is also a marked asymmetry in terms of information production, technical capacity, and data availability. This is a challenge that ALT must necessarily address as a binational institution, because water resources management in a transboundary system depends to a large extent on trust among actors. Trust requires transparency, comparable information, and of course, shared technical criteria. I'm sorry. Through the binational permanent observatory of the TDPS water system, ALT supports the integration of hydrological, meteorological, and environmental and territorial information that can help institutions better understand risk and identify adaptation of priorities. In this process of providing high-quality scientific and technical information, ALT has found a valuable ally in the Stockholm environmental system and in the TRANSCEND project, of course, which has contributed to strengthen our technical dialogue with the stakeholders, and the use of evidence and the development of tools that support better decision-making in our basin. Second, the region is strengthening coordination mechanisms among national and regional and local institutions. Climate adaptation cannot be addressed by a single institution acting alone. It requires articulation between water authorities, environmental agencies, subnational governments, academic institutions, local communities, and cooperation partners. In this context, ALT contributes as a binational technical and coordination platform, facilitating dialogue between Peruvian and Bolivian institutions and promoting a shared understanding of the challenges affecting the basin. Third, institutional capacity is being built through the formulation and promotion of projects that respond to priority adaptation needs. This includes initiatives related to water resources management, monitoring of water quality, ecosystem conservation, risk reduction, wastewater treatment, solid waste management, and support for more resilient territorial planning. In many cases, these actions are still in different stages of preparation and coordination. However, they are essential to move from diagnosis to implementation. Fourth, capacity building is also linked to the improvement of planning instruments. Adaptation requires that technical evidence be incorporated into institutional planning, investment decisions, and public policy processes. Therefore, ALT promotes the use of scientific and technical information to support binational and territorial planning while recognizing the specific mandates of each competent authority in Peru and in Bolivia. And fifth, and finally, we consider that training and knowledge exchange is essential. Institutional capacity is strengthened when technical teams are able to use updated tools, updated methodologies, and data sources. This mainly includes geographic information systems and hydrological and environmental monitoring. In this regard, workshops, technical meetings, exchange with cooperation agencies, and collaboration with universities and research centers play an important role. Regarding to the second question that you now see on the screen, how we keep the region informed about new opportunities to advance institutional capacity. Our approach is based on communication, coordination, and institutional network. Those three pillars. ALT maintains permanent communication with national and subnational counterparts in both countries through formal channels, technical meetings, coordination spaces, and binational dialogue mechanisms. Information is shared on emerging opportunities, ongoing initiatives, possible sources of technical assistance, and areas where joint action may be required. We also work to strengthen the role of the binational observatory as a platform for access to free and open information. Our observatory is not only a repository of data, it is intended to support institutional learning and transparency. By making technical information more accessible, it helps public institutions, researchers, and decision makers identify needs, gaps, and opportunities for adaptation. In addition, the region stays informed through participation in regional and international spaces related to water, climate change, environment, and sustainable development. These platforms are important because they allow institutions to learn from experiences in other basins, identify good practices, and understand new financing or cooperation opportunities. Another important mechanism is the relationship with international cooperation partners. Technical and financial cooperation can support studies, capacity building processes, pilot initiatives as well, and project preparation. ILT seeks to maintain an active dialogue with cooperation agencies and financial institutions while ensuring that any initiative is aligned with the priorities of both countries. With the institutional framework that is already in place on the TDPS system. And finally, we believe that information must be translated into practical opportunities. It is not enough to know that funding window or technical programs exist. Institutions must also have the capacity to prepare proposals that define priorities, coordinate with stakeholders, and demonstrate the relevance of adaptation actions. For this reason, one of the main challenges and also the main areas of work is to strengthen the ability of regional institutions to transform information into concrete, technical, sound, and feasible projects. In conclusion, our region is building institutional capacity for adaptation through better information, stronger coordination, and project formulation and planning. At the same time, we keep institutions informed through formal coordination challenge as the binational authority, as I was saying, but also participation in regional and international networks and dialogue with cooperation partners are part of our work. For ILT, adaptation is a shared responsibility. In a transboundary system such as the TDPS system, institutional capacity must be built collectively with technical rigor, respect for national competencies, and a long-term vision aimed at protecting water resources. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julio, for this presentation and this information. Super interesting. Perhaps we have some questions in the chat, but we will share these questions with you at the end of the presentations. So please keep the contact with us. And now we were talking about with Robert Blasco. Robert has a background in forest ecosystem research. Currently works at the Slovak Environmental Agency on climate change adaptation, bringing science and policy. Within the TRANSCEND project, he coordinates the Neutral Living Lab, engaging stakeholders and contributing to the development of projects modeling framework and tabs. So Robert, up to you if you could answer these two questions that we have.
Good afternoon and good morning as well. Let me
Thanks.
share my screen. And thank you for the introduction. You've pretty much covered my first slide. So yes, I'm from the Slovak Environment Agency and I'm a coordinator of the Neutral Living Lab. I'll speak a little bit more broadly and hopefully at the end I have answered the questions that you have asked. And just to give you a short overview of our living lab, Neutral Living Lab is focused on the upper part of the Nitra River Basin, which is a region with a long history of coal mining. Coal mining was phased out in 2023, and up until then, the coal power plant was the largest water user in the river basin.
Sorry, Robert, could you put the presentation in full screen?
I have, at least on my screen, it is appearing like presentation mode. Not on your screen?
No, not in our screen. Perhaps you have two screens.
Yes.
But
Let me.
but
Yeah.
no problem. No problem. Doesn't matter. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
Anyways, so unlike in the other regions or in the other living labs, the agriculture irrigation is not the main type of water use. And our region is also prone to droughts due to its geological structure and also due to the mining activities. Although maybe we don't experience such a severe water scarcity as in our living labs. Climate projections show that the water supply will be reduced in the future, and we are already experiencing events of droughts like this spring and the last spring when majority of the area of the living lab or the river basin is under severe drought, both hydrological and soil drought. So if I can just speak a bit broadly about the institutional capacity in Slovakia on a national level. Institutional capacity is anchored in many strategic documents, such as the National Adaptation Strategy, National Adaptation Plan, Water Concept Policy. However, as was mentioned already before, the implementation and the actions are often lagging behind. In this context, our agency has a central role in adaptation because we are an expert institution for the Ministry of Environment, and we participate in many strategic processes. For example, recently we have been part of the development of a new adaptation strategy that will be updated and passed hopefully this year. We have also prepared the methodologies for adaptation in different sectors in the past. And currently we are also coordinating development of national adaptation platform, ClimAdapt, which with the aim that this will be a knowledge base for adaptation in Slovakia, just like Climate Adapt on a EU level. Last year, a new Center for Climate Change Adaptation has been found at our agency, although I have to say that it's still understaffed and needs to be further developed. The institutions in Slovakia have been underfinanced for a long time, and they're currently facing strong pressure because due to the political landscape, and there have been many cuts in employees, and also because of the bad shape of the economy. So overall, there is also a shortage of qualified experts in the field because of the brain drain. So these are the challenges on national level, but it looks similar in the Nitra Living Lab, where institutions and different stakeholders like capacities and resources for systemic adaptation. Here are some examples. For example, the mining company has some projects or are planning some projects for water retention. On the first picture, you can see the former coal open pit on the surface that they want to use as a water retention measure and create a lake. Likewise, on the second picture, it's a former sedimentary pond, which could be also used as a water retention pond and for recreational purposes. However, after the mines were closed and they lost major income, and currently they are only a small team that have no resources or capacity for time-consuming processes like environmental impact assessment, which are necessary to proceed with such projects. On the other hand, state water managers are facing also challenges when they have to cover costs of pipeline failures, because large debt on infrastructure has accumulated over the past decades. And so there is not so many resources left for systemic adaptation. Also, their efforts in modeling are mostly focused on floods rather than droughts or modeling the climate change impacts, which is usually done by individual projects or academia. Another huge barrier we are facing is data availability and accessibility among the institutions, and it's often even among the institutions that are under the same ministry. And the process is quite rigorous and time-consuming. So overall, water management is quite fragmented among many actors with different competencies, and thus also the adaptation is fragmented and non-systemic. That's why I think that projects like TRANSCEND are very important, because they provide a platform for connecting the key stakeholders from different sectors, where they can exchange their experiences, views, knowledge. The project also brings, and then the strong consortium of the partners brings a lot of expertise and training to build and to support institutional capacity. For example, thanks to our partners, we have climate projections for the region and also a hydrological model set up for the basin, which were not in place before. We are also developing serious game that we will be testing pretty soon, in about 2 weeks, in our workshop, and which will provide the opportunity for the stakeholders to see the consequences of their water management decisions. And also it's a platform for sharing news and news about the opportunities and upcoming events and happenings in the project. There are also some opportunities for the projects to be scaled up and the results to be used in other river basins and living labs in Slovakia. We would also like to disseminate the results and reach a wider audience of stakeholders through the National Adaptation Platform. And other possible directions are, for example, integrate the outputs of the project into other projects like Climax or Life Not Adapted we have recently started at the agency. So that's all for me. I will leave it here, and thanks for the attention.
Thanks so much, Robert. And please, to all of you, if you have some questions, you could write it in the chat. And then if we have enough time, we could share with you in live the response. Otherwise, we could respond by email your answers. And the third case that we want to share today, it's about the Orontes Living Lab. We have today Maria Therese Abisab, is a PhD, and she's a senior researcher in water and agriculture at the Lebanese Agricultural Research Institute, where she leads the climate and water unit. She works on irrigation management, climate resilience, wastewater reuse, and sustainable water governance, with experience linking scientific research and national policy and decisions making in Lebanon. She has coordinated numerous international projects, published widely in peer-reviewed journals, and contributes to capacity building, teaching, and advisory work on water security and climate adaptation in the Mediterranean agriculture. So up to you, Marie-Therese.
Thank you, Tanya. Hello, everyone. So I am Marie-Therese Abisab, a researcher at the Lebanese Agricultural Research Institute, LARI. LARI is the National Public Institute that works in agriculture. It operates multiple experimental stations across different agroecological zones in Lebanon, including the Orontes River Basin, which is a transboundary and climate-sensitive region. So our institute works across different research areas, Particularly, we work on sustainable water management, plant biotechnology, animal health and production, food safety and quality, and also crop production and protection. So how is LARI building institutional capacity for adaptation? In the Orontes watershed, institutional capacity is being built through mainly 3 pillars that are shown on my slide. So we mainly work on applied science, data and digital services, and also through stakeholder engagement. So let me explain a little bit about the 3 pillars and what we are doing works or activities in the Orontes watershed. So for the applied research, we work mainly very closely to the farmers through demonstration plots or even by conducting trainings or field days. For example, we try with them climate resilient seeds or crop varieties, particularly seeds and legumes, cereals and legumes. So these varieties are selected for their ability to tolerate drought and heat stress, which is essential for advancing food security and the climate change adaptation in this area. So LARI usually carries out this work in strong collaboration with different institutions such as ICARDA and ACSAD. Always as applied research for adaptation, LARI is implementing activities in relation to promoting water management and irrigation efficiency in this basin. We actively work on testing and demonstrating the use of different water-saving irrigation technologies and also on improving irrigation scheduling through farmer trainings, field days, and demonstration plots. These efforts are usually implemented through several initiatives. For example, we have several funded projects. With the EU, we had different initiatives in this region, such as Aklima's project, Account, Nostalgique, ProtectMed. Also, as applied research for adaptation in this basin, we work on alternative water resources, particularly wastewater reuse. And importantly, I'd like to say that the first pilot in Lebanon on treated wastewater was carried out in the Orontes River Basin in a village called I'at within a project with FAO and EUMI. And this pilot was very important at national scale because it generated local evidence, scientific local evidence on safe reuse practices and how they can contribute to improve governance approaches. Particularly, this trial supported the development of the Lebanon's first national standard on water reuse. Now, for the second pillar of adaptation, LARI is working in the Orontes region on data and digital climate services. In this region, we have 6 weather stations that we use to collect information on weather variables and rainfall. And we have developed a mobile app called LARI Lab that we use as a direct communication tool with farmers. So with this app, we send weather and rainfall information, but also early warnings and alerts about extreme climate events, such as the occurrence of frost, hail, heat waves, and other conditions that can affect farming practices. For the third pillar of adaptation, we mainly work on collaboration with national and local stakeholders. So institutional capacity also depends a lot on coordination among actors. Specifically, we work closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, water authorities, municipalities, academia, farmer cooperatives, and other entities. And these collaborations are very essential for implementing adaptation measures on the ground and ensuring uptake by local communities. However, we have to say that coordination among institutions in Lebanon is very fragmented, especially when it comes to water governance, where responsibilities are often distributed across multiple institutions without full integration. So strengthening the coherence remains a key challenge for transformative adaptation. Now, how does Larry keep the Orontes Basin informed about new opportunities? Here, as I presented, it's a combination of different things together, particularly a combination of institutional, field-based, and digital approaches. So that's why at institutional level, we try always to bring all the problems of this watershed in national technical committees, in regional and international research networks, and also in donor-funded programs and project platforms. We also ensure direct dissemination to the before through training sessions, field days, demonstration plots. And currently, we are working a lot on developing digital services, particularly dashboards, in order to move towards accessible and user-friendly information systems. But still, a lot of efforts are needed to move forward. And to conclude about Larry's role in adaptation, we can say that adaptation is not only, or must not be only studied, but effectively implemented on the ground with farmers. And that's why what we do is very little, still very little, in respect to what must be done. And of course, we need a lot in terms of readiness. So readiness in terms of staff readiness, technical readiness, financing mechanism, and many other things. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Maria Therese, for these words and this information about Orontes Living Lab. I think with that we have these 3 case studies that, at least what I saw, we have the very common points related with the capacity building for adaptation. One of these is related with information, the lack of information, and also the coordination to share this information. It's very important to improve how we are adapting to these climate conditions. Also related with gaps in collaboration and integration between institutions. In the different Living Labs, we see some of these examples related with the need to integrate actions related to adapt the regions, and also how to share information with the different habitants in the region. Also, it's a challenge, but these different Living Labs are advancing in this topic mainly, and Robert highlight that these kind of projects could really help in this work to share what we have and the advance that we have related with adaptation and the technical instruments that we develop in, for example, in TRANSCEND, with the different stakeholders in the region that could improve the institutional capacity and also the information to make decisions related with adaptation. With that, I think we have these 3 cases study very interesting, and thank you so much for the panelists to share the information and thoughts related with how to improve our institutional capacity for adaptation. And this is all, I think, for the panel. I don't think we have enough time to share some of the questions, but in your hands, Jaros, if you believe that we could answer some of these questions, or we go to the wrap up.
And thank you very much, Tanya. That was wonderful. And thank you to all the panelists. I mean, they gave an interesting overview about the situation on the ground, but what they have in common is basically within the landscape of the capabilities that we are covering in this Webstival, but also in the project. And also that was something that Thomas mentioned as the cumulative experience. We are saying that we should take a different road, right? That's the first one is to start with how do I want to, and what kind of innovation I can implement. So what is the business model? What is the business innovation? What is the reform? And starting from the finance and going through the institutional competencies, it is often easier to reach the level of technical capabilities and technical method that I need to demonstrate in support of my reform. So it was interesting. Most of the presentation have highlighted what is the current situation, what are the challenges, and less so what kind of institutional capabilities are missing. And those are probably, the openness for change, ability to drive the change, ability to advocate the change, and so on. So it's not something that is easy to tease out. So I think with the Webstival, we have hit the right point, right? Focusing on the key elements in order to drive a change. So I liked all those talks. But we also need to go beyond and start thinking about let's make it happen. So where do we start and how do we go ahead of that with that? So this is not the end of our Webstival. There will be another day tomorrow, and we will get eventually to the technical capabilities, which is very good. And there will be a colleague of mine also talking about the type of more ambitious climate risk assessment and assessment of the benefits and co-benefits of adaptation and the risk reduction. So that will be Dr. Silvia Torrezan, who will speak also in connection to the Climax and Climax Next, but also tapping into a wider pool of experiences. So it will nicely wrap up our journey during this Webstival. So don't forget to tune in for tomorrow, and I think we will be starting again at around this period of day. So with that, I think we have exhausted our time. Thank you very much, Tanya. Thank you very much to our panelists, and again to Thomas and Melissa, everybody who helped to prepare this Webstival, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.